Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of The Thing About Birth. Each episode I will dive into a different topic relating to birth, pregnancy, hypnobirthing and parenting. Keep an eye out for special Q&A episodes, guest episodes and relaxation episodes. Thank you to those who have liked, shared, subscribed, watched and listened so far. It really means the world to me. Enjoy! Hello everybody, thanks for joining today. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about what postpartum looked like for me this time around. Before I do that, I wanted to just mention some thoughts that I'm having about the podcast YouTube channel. Obviously doing this takes up a chunk of time. You've got the recording and then the editing, which I always thought would be more enjoyable than it actually is. And I suppose at the moment I'm just not feeling hugely excited about doing it, and I wanted to hear from you guys, obviously you guys being the ones that are listening. So if you could please pop a comment either on the podcast on Spotify or on the YouTube channel, just to say if you are interested in me keeping going, if you're not too bothered, or if you're listening, I assume that you are interested in me keeping going, or you're just happy either way. So if you could just maybe let me know your thoughts, and also what sorts of things, if you do want me to keep going, you would like to hear about. I used to link it to what I was posting on my social media and on my blog, but then I felt a bit like I was just repeating myself in a bit of a cycle. And then I've been talking over this last year, of course, about pregnancy and then birth, and sort of like my own experience of, my pregnancy last year and giving birth to that child back in December. So I had lots of ideas for what I was going to do with this, but the time it takes to do and such things is kind of causing me a bit of frustration. And I'm not really sure if it's worth it. So I love doing the blog. I think I do much better typing than I do talking. And the reason why I started this in the first place was because I wanted to share things that I felt that I should be sharing on my social media pages, but I didn't quite have, I couldn't fit times to consistently go live. And doing videos like reels, there wasn't always enough time for me to speak. So I thought, well, okay, I'll start doing this instead, but it hasn't really panned out the way I wanted it to. So yeah, so I'm just interested in your thoughts about me continuing going forward. There won't be any posts going out next month. Reduce down what I'm doing throughout August because it's the 6 weeks holidays, and I just want to be really present with the kids. So I'll be back again in September, unless, in that time I decide that it's not the right thing to be doing. Moving on. So I wanted to just do a little bit about what the postpartum period was like for me this time around. I mean, I'm still in it, of course, but our baby is 6.5 months while I'm recording this. I can't believe that she's 6.5 months already. And this is obviously, as you might well know, my third baby. So the postpartum period has been slightly different with each child. And so I just wanted to have a little chat about what we did differently this time round. So I read a great book. It's the first 40 days, that's what it's called, and it's about nourishing the new mother. I've learned sort of in the lead up to giving birth that in other cultures they do a lot more to take care of the mother after she's given birth. There's, in this where we are from, unfortunately, there's a quite a bit of you give birth and you're sent home and that's it. You have to look after your baby. And there's not a lot done in terms of actually mothering the mother. Of course, there are people who help out, but there's no, the encouragement is that you should be out and about and doing things as normal instead of resting. So I decided that I wanted to do a sort of lying in period. I think it's generally meant to be something like 6 days in the bed, 6 days on the bed, 6 days around the bed. Now I didn't think I could lie in bed for 6 days, and it might not be 6 days. I might have my number wrong. Um, I thought I might have, spent 1 or 2 days in bed, but I kind of was viewing the couch as my bed. So that was sort of my plan, and we planned, because she was born in December, we decided that we were going to hold off on having visitors for a while. Obviously, flu and bug season, plus my sister lives abroad, and I did want to wait until she had been able to come before we started introducing the baby to lots of other people, immediate family aside. So we planned really hard for this kind of lying in period. I batch cooked a load of meals and some bone broth. Now, I did this with my first child, except for the bone broth. I batch cooked something like 3 weeks worth of meals. I just basically had like 4 recipes and I just cooked 2 lots of them. And it was just, two or 3 lots of them, sorry. My husband's very perfectly capable of cooking us food, and of course we were going to have a takeaway, but I wanted to make sure that we had, especially this time round, because we already had 2 children that we had to feed as well. I wanted to make sure that we just had easy to go grab meals from the freezer, defrost them and cook them, sort of thing. So I did that with my first as well. I didn't with my second. And so this time around, I was like, right, we're going to get really, really nutritional meals in the freezer, some bone broth, some soups, and that's going to be what we eat for the first few weeks. And yeah, it was just basically, I wanted to breastfeed, so it was just going to be a huge focus on, feeding, bonding, and just really enjoying that time. So when I look back at that time now, the and I was aware of this at the time, but the hormone dip that happens after your baby is born, so it kind of happens when your milk comes in, so it's within the first week, but it varies, sort of 3-5 days, it varies. It hit me really hard, and now that I can look at it with a clear head, I think that there are a few things that I should have done differently, and one of those things was I should have gotten out a bit more. I stayed in, I think, a bit too much, and I relied a little bit too much on my husband doing things. And he was actually the one who said to me one day that he thought that I wasn't doing enough for myself. Not in a you should be doing more, but just in a you not doing anything for yourself, and I think it's kind of affecting how you feel. And he was right. Once I started doing a bit more myself, I did feel a bit better. And another thing is that, so some of you may know that I express breast milk for our daughter, and I should have started doing that straight away. I really, really wanted to nurse her because my other two I expressed for them for 2 different reasons. And I was absolutely determined I wasn't going to do that this time, that I was going to feed her myself. But we struggled from the get-go. She was quite happy to latch and she was a hungry baby, but she had a tongue tie as well. And so the tongue tie, if any of you have ever experienced it before, can make things really painful. And because it was really painful, and because I had other children to be taken care of, and she was losing weight, and she was a good chunky baby, she was losing weight, I started sort of nursing her, but then topping her up with express milk, and then that very quickly led on to her having bottle feeds. And so even though her tongue tie was snipped before she was even a month old, by the time it was snipped, she was so used to bottles that getting her to latch, even without the tongue tie, was still super painful. So I think all of that, really impacted how I was feeling in those first few weeks. And I think if I'd done things differently, like maybe pumped, had the lying in period, but a bit more structure to it, then I would have felt better in those first few weeks. But I do think that it helped me physically heal quicker, and she wasn't exposed to any bugs throughout that season, somehow we managed to avoid the kids bringing any home from school. So that was, you know, something that we achieved quite well. I did have a friend who brought us some food as well, which was super nice, and really delicious. And you know, it's not a time that I'm going to get back, so I'm trying not to look at it too much in a I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. You know, things have worked out absolutely wonderfully, and I'm pumping now for her, and that's meant that I've been able to give her breast milk. So that's, while at the time I was, you know, devastated that the nursing wasn't working, at least now she's getting the breast milk, and really that was my goal, was for her to have that. So, you know, it is all fine. It was quite funny because my first outing, other than taking her to the feeding clinic at the hospital, was to go to my middle child's first ever nativity. And one of the things that had worried me when I was pregnant was because I knew I was due in December and I didn't want to miss the nativities, because it was my middle child's first one and my eldest child's last one. And so I didn't want to miss them. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to go because, you know, if I'd have just given birth, then that might be really difficult. So my mother-in-law went, no, my husband went with my mum, and my mother-in-law and my husband were sort of like, we really think that you should go, it'll be really beneficial to you. And I was very much, no, I can't go, I'm a mess, I'm crying all the time, I've got all the postpartum things going on, I can't do it, and like I can't leave it because I'll have to feed her. And my husband very rightly said, she'll be all right, it's not even an hour, she'll be all right. And so very, very last minute I threw some clothes on and went, and I stayed very low key. I did not want to speak to anybody, and I bawled my eyes out when I saw my little girl walking along. She was the Star of Bethlehem, and it really did give me such a boost, and it was such a special moment because she smiled so much when she saw that I was there, because I'd told her, there was a good chance that I wouldn't make it to see it, and she was so happy to see me. And then a week later I went to my son's, and it was a similar sort of thing, very emotional, but he was very comedic in his role as a wise man. So that was, lovely. Something else that greatly differed was my length of hospital stay. So with my first, I stayed in hospital for 3 or 4 nights, and with my second, it was 4 or 5 nights. Now, with this one, my birth was so straightforward and lovely. I had no complications, had no interventions, except for a managed third stage. I did share the birth story last month, so that is available. And because it all went so well, they were actually planning on sending me home on the same day. So she was born at 6 in the morning, and they were preparing me to go home. But then, because we were struggling with feeding, they decided it was better that I stayed in. And I was a bit disappointed, but to be honest, I think that first night, it's not too bad because, you've got people there to help. And you don't obviously rest in the hospital, but I think because you've got people there to help, I think having the first night is not too horrendous. But by the next morning I was well ready to go home. I just wanted to be at home. I felt like I could get feeding under control better if I was at home, and I felt like they weren't so busy that I felt like they couldn't get to me, but I felt like they obviously had other people that had worse problems than me, which is totally fine, but it just meant that I didn't feel like their assistance was particularly useful. Not that they weren't fantastic, but just, like they would come in, help me get her latched, and then just leave, and I just wouldn't see anybody again for hours. So, but I got a bit upset, and a midwife sort of came in, and I don't know if somebody had told them that they could hear me crying or what, but she came in and she said, what's getting you so upset? And I said, like, I can't feed her, and if I can't feed her, you won't let me go home, and I want to go home. I want to go home to my other children. I want to go home and rest. I want to, I don't want to be in hospital. And they sent me home that day. So that was completely new to me, to be out the day after. And I also had to have injections this time, sort of anti-clotting injections, I think, which I had to have every morning at like 7 a.m. They were very painful, but I didn't have to have them for long. I think it was like 10 days or something like that. Can't even remember. But my husband had the honour of doing that. So yeah, so now we're 6 months in, and I'm, well past that sort of hormonal postpartum dip, and feeling fairly normal, really. And I can remember that moment when I started to feel myself, and I can remember I would say to people, I feel myself, but I'm still emotional, and I'm still this, and I'm still that. I think I was scared to just say, yeah, I feel okay, I feel myself again. And now, I do. I mean, I'm still tired, and I'm still only 6 months into it, but yeah, things, it's nice to feel like me. So that's where we are for now. I'm pumping, which is exhausting, and we don't go to many classes and things, because it's never really been my scene. I prefer to spend time with friends. There is one really great class that I go to, about it's nurtured in neuroscience, so it's all about baby brain development. That's fantastic. And I did do a really great baby massage course run by the same lady. So yeah, that's where we are. She's got teeth, and soon we'll be weaning. So if you are interested in me continuing this podcast, I'll be talking a lot about weaning over the coming months. So yeah, there we go. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening today. Please, if you haven't already, like, share, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Ashley Nicole Hypnobirthing, and sign up for my monthly mailing list, The Thing About Birth, where you'll also get a free birth plan template and writing guide. See you next time.